At 11:47 on the last night in my apartment, my best friend stood in my bedroom doorway, looked at the bare mattress, and asked, "Which side is mine?" I was holding a roll of packing tape between my teeth. For several seconds, I forgot how teeth worked. My name is Mason Reed. I was 25, 3 days away from starting a new job in Chicago, and approximately 9 hours away from driving out of Columbus with everything I owned packed into a rented truck. Everything except the mattress. And apparently, Julia Bennett. She leaned against the doorframe in faded jeans and a soft blue sweater, her dark hair twisted into the kind of loose knot that had been coming apart for hours. There was dust on one cheek, and she was holding 2 bottles of water like she hadn't just asked a question capable of stopping a man's heart. I removed the tape from my mouth. "Your side of what?" She pointed with one bottle. "The bed, Mason. I was hoping you meant Ohio. Your side of Ohio has terrible parking." "Then I'm confused." Julia sighed and walked past me. "My apartment building shut off the water because a pipe burst on the third floor. I can't shower, my kitchen ceiling is leaking, and your couch is currently shrink-wrapped in the back of a truck." She stopped beside the mattress. "So," she said, "which side is mine?" To understand why this felt less like a practical sleeping arrangement and more like the universe finally losing patience with me, you need to know that Julia and I had been best friends for 2 years. Not childhood friends, not cousins in everything but blood. We met when she corrected my coffee order at a bookstore cafe. I'd asked for something called a caramel cloud. She'd looked at me and said, "You seem nice, so I'm going to save you from drinking dessert foam in public." She ordered me regular coffee, stole half my muffin, and somehow became the person I called when my car died, when my sister got engaged, and when I received the Chicago offer I hadn't applied for because my boss had recommended me. Julia worked as an event coordinator at the art museum. She was competent, impatient with nonsense, and could make a room full of wealthy donors behave using nothing but a clipboard and one raised eyebrow. She was also beautiful in a way I had trained myself not to examine too closely. That training had started failing about 3 months earlier. She'd fallen asleep against my shoulder during a movie. I'd looked down, smelled her citrus shampoo, and realized with horrifying clarity that I didn't want to move. Not then. Possibly not ever. But 6 weeks before that, Julia had ended a relationship with a man who treated affection like a bargaining chip. I wasn't going to become the convenient best friend waiting beside the emotional exit ramp. Then Chicago happened. I told myself leaving was clean, mature, good for my career. I did not ask Julia whether she wanted me to stay. Asking people to stay had never been my strength. My father left when I was 12 after promising he was only taking some time. Since then, I developed a neat little habit of walking away first and calling it independence. Julia knew that about me, which was probably why she was watching me so carefully. "You're serious?" I asked. "It's nearly midnight. I have been carrying boxes since 6. My building has become an indoor water feature." She held out one bottle. "Yes, I'm serious." I took it and our fingers touched. It should have been nothing. We'd hugged, shared food, fallen asleep on opposite ends of couches. But the apartment was empty enough to amplify everything. The soft scrape of her thumb against mine, the rain ticking against the window, the fact that this was our last night in the same city. Julia's gaze dropped briefly to my mouth before returning to my eyes. That was new. Or maybe I'd only just become brave enough to notice. "You can have the bed," I said. "I'll sleep on the floor." Her expression flattened. "Don't make this weird." "I'm trying very hard not to." "You're succeeding in the opposite direction." "I'm aware." A smile tugged at her lips. "We've shared hotel rooms before." "Separate beds." "We've taken naps on your couch." "Opposite ends." "You held my hand through that entire flight to Boston." "You threatened to break my fingers during turbulence." "And yet you kept holding on." The joke landed softer than either of us expected. Julia looked down at the water bottle in her hands. "You usually do." Something shifted in my chest. For months, our friendship had lived inside safe gestures. Coffee appearing on bad mornings, her spare key on my ring, my jacket over her shoulders after late museum events. Things that could be called kindness if neither of us looked directly at them. Now there was nowhere left to look except at each other. I stepped closer and brushed the dust from her cheek with my thumb. Julia went still. You missed a spot, I said. Is it gone? My hand remained against her face a second longer than necessary. No, I admitted. Her eyes warmed. Liar. Before I could answer, she moved away and opened the small overnight bag I hadn't noticed beside the bedroom wall. You brought a bag? Clean clothes, toothbrush, my emergency makeup kit. You have an emergency makeup kit? I coordinate weddings. Mascara emergencies have destroyed stronger women than me. I laughed, but my attention stayed on the bag. She had known she was staying before she asked. That realization settled between my ribs. Julia pulled out a charcoal t-shirt and held it against herself. It was mine. An old college shirt she'd borrowed after spilling red wine at my sister's engagement party. You still have that? You never asked for it back. I asked twice. You never asked convincingly. She disappeared into the bathroom to change. I stood in the bedroom staring at the mattress like it had personally betrayed me. A minute later, she came back wearing my shirt and a pair of black sleep shorts. The shirt reached halfway down her thighs. I looked at the ceiling. Julia noticed. Of course she noticed. Mason? Yes? You're allowed to look at me. That brought my eyes back to hers. Her teasing expression had faded. The woman standing in front of me wasn't asking for admiration. She was asking not to be avoided. So I let myself look. At the familiar shirt on her body, at her bare legs, at the uncertainty she was trying to hide beneath that raised chin. You look, I cleared my throat, dangerously comfortable. There he is. Who? The man who used to flirt with me before he decided moving meant he had to become emotionally tax deductible. I stared at her. I flirted with you? For 2 years. I thought we were joking. I know. 2 words, quietly delivered. They hit harder than any accusation could have. Julia climbed onto the mattress and settled on the right side, then patted the space beside her. I switched off the overhead light. Only the bedside lamp remained, throwing a warm circle across the mostly empty room. When I lay down, I left a careful foot between us. Julia looked at the gap. Is that an international border? It's a respectful buffer. It's ridiculous. She moved closer. Her shoulder touched mine. Her knee brushed my leg beneath the blanket, and neither of us pulled away. For a while, we listened to the rain. Then Julia said, Do you remember the night you got the Chicago offer? Yeah. You asked me if leaving was a mistake. And you said it was a great opportunity. I lied. I turned my head. She was already looking at me. Why? Because I wanted you to choose for yourself. Her voice tightened. And because I was afraid if I asked you to stay, you would. That doesn't make sense. It does if staying for me would have made you resent me later. I shifted onto my side. You think that little of me? No. She faced me, close enough that I could see the faint freckle below her left eye. I think that much of what this job means to you. The tenderness in her answer left me defenseless. I reached for her hand beneath the blanket. Julia threaded her fingers through mine immediately. No hesitation, no joke, just choice. I don't want this to be goodbye, I said. Her eyes glistened, but she smiled. Then don't treat it like one. My thumb moved over her knuckles. What am I supposed to treat it like? Julia's gaze dropped to our joined hands. Then she looked back at me and whispered, Maybe the first night we stop pretending we're only friends. Before I could respond, she closed the distance between us, pressed her forehead to mine, and asked the question that changed everything. Mason, if I asked you not to leave alone tomorrow, would you let me come with you? For a moment, I was sure I had misunderstood her. Come with me, I repeated. Julia's forehead remained against mine. That is what I said. To Chicago? No, to the gas station. Yes, to Chicago. For how long? The question made her pull back. I watched caution close over her face and immediately hated myself for putting it there. I'm not rejecting you, I said quickly. I'm trying to understand whether you're offering to split the driving or announcing that you've secretly packed your entire life into that overnight bag. I own more than one sweater, Mason. I've seen your closet. You own more than one version of the same sweater. She tried not to smile. It helped, but only slightly. I took Friday and Monday off, she said. I thought I could drive with you, help you unpack, then take the train home Monday night. You planned all this? I considered all this. There's a difference. And if I'd said no, I would have called you an idiot, gone home to my leaking apartment, and denied this conversation ever happened. That sounds healthy. It was my strongest plan. I lifted our joined hands between us. You should come. Her breath caught. You mean that? Yes. Mason, don't say it because I'm here and it's late and I'm wearing your shirt. The shirt is making a compelling argument. She shoved my shoulder. I caught her wrist before she could retreat. The playfulness disappeared when my thumb settled over her pulse. I mean it, I said. Come with me. Her eyes searched mine. And after Monday? She asked. There it was, the question beneath the question. I could have made another joke. Instead, I forced myself to stay where I was, with her hand in mine and my heart behaving like it wanted out. After Monday, I call you, I said. Probably too often. We figure out weekends, we stop pretending the way we are with each other is normal friendship. What are we then? I don't know yet. Julia's expression fell. But I want to find out, I added. With you, not with anyone else. The softness returned to her face slowly. You really need to lead with the second half. I'm new at this. At talking? At wanting something I can't pack safely into a box. Her gaze held mine. Then she touched my face, fingertips grazing my jaw. You could start by kissing me. Every thought in my head vanished except one. Are you sure? Mason, I climbed into your bed, admitted I've been flirting with you for 2 years, and offered to drive 6 hours in a rental truck that probably smells like old fries. It smells like vinyl and poor decisions. I'm about to add another one if you don't. I kissed her. Julia made a small, startled sound against my mouth as though she hadn't expected me to finally listen. Then her fingers slid into my hair and she kissed me back. There was nothing cautious about it. 2 years of almost seemed to collapse into that moment. Every lingering hug, every glance we'd dismissed, every evening one of us had invented a reason not to go home. Her mouth was warm and soft, her body fitting against mine with alarming ease. I slipped an arm around her waist and pulled her closer. She smiled into the kiss. What? I murmured. You took long enough. You're criticizing my technique already? Not the technique. The timeline. I kissed her again before she could elaborate. This one slowed. Her thumb brushed my cheek and the tenderness of it nearly undid me more than the first kiss had. When we finally separated, neither of us moved far. Well, Julia whispered. Well, that was dangerously comfortable? She laughed, then tucked her face against my chest. I held her there, listening to her breathing settle. For the first time all evening, leaving didn't feel like an ending, it felt like a door I hadn't noticed opening. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Her fingers traced the seam of my t-shirt. Tell you what? That you wanted this. Why didn't you? I asked first. You kissed first. There's a difference. I waited. Julia sighed. When we met, you were 6 months out of a relationship and convinced you were never dating again. My dramatic phase. Your dramatic phase lasted 18 months. I was committed. And then I started seeing Adrian. I knew his name would surface eventually. Adrian Vale had been polished, charming, and skilled at making Julia apologize whenever he disappointed her. I disliked him immediately, which Julia had attributed to protectiveness. She hadn't been entirely wrong. I thought you were happy, I said. I was trying to be. Her voice went quiet. And after it ended, I didn't trust myself. I didn't want you to be the person I reached for because I was hurt. So you waited. So did you. I didn't want to take advantage of you. I know. She tilted her head to look up at me. That's one of the reasons I love you. Everything inside me stopped. Julia froze. Her eyes widened as if the words had surprised her too. Neither of us breathed. You love me? I asked. A flush spread across her cheeks. I meant, don't take it back. I wasn't going to. You looked like you were about to crawl under the mattress. I was considering it. I touched her cheek. Please don't take it back. She swallowed. I love you. I don't know when it changed and I don't know what happens after Monday, but I do. The answer rose in me instantly, frightening in its certainty. I loved the woman who knew how I took my coffee and when I was lying about being fine. The woman who had carried half my apartment down 3 flights of stairs and still found the courage to ask for a place beside me. I had probably loved her long before I allowed myself to name it. I love you too, I said. Julia stared at me. Then she kissed me with both hands around my face, laughing when our noses bumped. That, she said, breathless, you should have led with. I'll revise the presentation. You do that. We lay tangled together beneath the blanket, making plans in the dark. She would drive my car while I took the truck. We'd stop at the diner off Interstate 65 that her aunt swore had the best blueberry pancakes in Indiana. On Saturday, we'd unpack. Sunday, I'd take her somewhere in Chicago that involved actual plates and no cardboard boxes. A first date after declaring love, Julia said. Very traditional. We've done everything backward. We met over stolen muffin. You stole my muffin. You were drinking a caramel cloud. You had forfeited your rights. Sometime after 2, her breathing deepened against my neck. I should have slept. Instead, I held her and stared at the ceiling, caught between happiness and a fear I didn't want to examine. Monday. She had said the word several times. Each time, it sounded more like a deadline. At 5:30, my alarm vibrated across the floor. Julia groaned and tightened her arm around me. Sell the truck. We need the truck. Sell your belongings. They're already in the truck. Set it on fire. That seems excessive. She opened one eye. Then stop moving. I kissed her forehead. Coffee. Acceptable compromise. While she showered using the last of my hot water, I carried our bags downstairs. The rain had stopped, leaving the street glossy beneath the early light. Julia's overnight bag tipped when I placed it in the trunk of my car. A folder slid from the open zipper and landed at my feet. I bent to pick it up. The logo on the front belonged to the Lakeshore Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. Below it, printed in bold letters, were the words, Employment Offer, Director of Special Events. Julia appeared behind me, hair damp, her expression turning pale when she saw the folder in my hand. You weren't planning to take the train home Monday, I said. She folded her arms around herself. No, she admitted. I wasn't. The folder felt heavier than paper should. You have a job offer in Chicago, I said. Julia nodded. And you were going to let me think you were going home? I haven't accepted it. That wasn't my question. Her face tightened. I know. The street was waking around us. A bus sighed at the corner. Somewhere above, a window opened and music began playing in a neighbor's apartment. Ordinary sounds on a morning that no longer felt ordinary. When did you apply? I asked. The week after you accepted your job. My stomach dropped. Because of me? Because Lakeshore is one of the best contemporary art museums in the Midwest. The position pays more, gives me my own department, and puts me in charge of their annual gala. But would you have applied if I weren't moving? She hesitated. That was answer enough. I handed her the folder. You should have told me. I wanted to. Last night would have been a good time. Last night I was trying to tell you how I felt, while leaving out the part where our entire long-distance problem might not exist. Nothing has been decided. Then why say you were taking the train home? Because I might. Julia's voice cracked across the empty street. She lowered it immediately. I have until Monday to answer. If I say yes, they want me in Chicago in 3 weeks. I haven't resigned. I haven't found an apartment. My whole life is still here. So, you plan to decide after spending the weekend with me? Her silence gave me another answer I didn't like. I stepped back. So, this is a test? No. You come to Chicago, try us out for 3 days, and if I pass, you take the job? That isn't fair. Isn't it? No. She shoved the folder into her bag. The job is separate from you. You just admitted you applied because I was leaving. I said I might not have seen the listing if I hadn't been thinking about Chicago. I did not spend years building my career so I could follow a man across state lines. I didn't say you did. You thought it loudly. I exhaled and rubbed both hands over my face. 10 minutes ago, I'd been imagining blueberry pancakes and a future that had abruptly become possible. Now I couldn't tell which parts of the night had been real and which had been Julia arranging the pieces before making a decision. That thought must have shown on my face. Her eyes hardened. Don't, she said. Don't what? Turn last night into manipulation because you're scared. I'm not scared. Mason, fear is practically your family crest. The accuracy stung. I opened the truck door. We should get on the road. Julia stared at me. That's it? We're already behind schedule. You're doing it right now. Doing what? Packing the conversation away because you don't like how it feels. I have a 6-hour drive. And I have 6 hours to wonder why I thought honesty with you would be different. You weren't honest with me. Her expression crumpled for half a second before she got it under control. No, she said. I was late. She climbed into my car and shut the door. We left Columbus in separate vehicles. For the first hour, the only contact between us was her silver car in my side mirror. She stayed 3 lengths behind the truck, close enough that I knew she was there, far enough to make the distance deliberate. At the first fuel stop, I expected her to remain in the car. Instead, she walked over and held out a coffee. Regular, she said. No cloud. I accepted it. Thank you. You're welcome. She turned away. Julia. She stopped. I wanted to say everything correctly. Unfortunately, I had no history of doing that. I'm not angry you applied, I said. I'm angry you didn't trust me enough to tell me. She faced me. And I'm angry that your first reaction was to assume I'd use us to make a career decision. I didn't assume. You did. I couldn't deny it. A cold breeze lifted strands of hair across her face. She tucked them behind one ear, her hand trembling slightly. I didn't tell you because I wanted last night to be about us, she said. Not geography, not a salary, not whether moving would be convenient. If I'd shown you that offer before I told you I loved you, would you have believed me? Yes. She gave me a look. I sighed. Eventually. That's what I thought. A family passed between us on the way into the convenience store. We both stepped aside, ending up closer. I'm sorry, I said. For which part? The accusation. Shutting down. Making you feel like last night mattered less because you had other news. Her shoulders eased. I'm sorry I hid it, she said. I was afraid you'd think I only climbed into your bed because Chicago suddenly became practical. The practical thing would have been sleeping. You're not very good at practical. Neither are you. No, she agreed. Apparently, I move furniture for men who insult my sweaters. I held out my hand. Julia looked at it, then at me. This doesn't resolve everything, she warned. I know. We still need to talk. I know. And you don't get to interrogate me while driving a 12-foot truck. That seems reasonable. She put her hand in mine. I drew her closer and touched my forehead to hers, repeating the gesture she'd used the night before. I believe you, I said. Her eyes closed. Thank you. I'm still terrified. I know. How? Family crest. I laughed and she kissed me. It wasn't the hungry kiss from the mattress, it was quieter, an apology and a promise not to retreat. Her hand rested over my heart as if she were asking it to settle. It didn't. But I kissed her back anyway. We reached the Indiana Diner just before 10. It had red vinyl booths, chrome napkin holders, and enough ceramic roosters to suggest an obsession. Julia slid into the seat across from me and ordered blueberry pancakes without opening the menu. You trust your aunt that much? I asked. My aunt has been divorced 4 times, but she's never been wrong about breakfast. Reassuring distinction. When the pancakes arrived, Julia stole the first bite from my plate. There's an identical stack in front of you. Yours tastes less judgmental. I watched her close her eyes over the syrup and felt some of the tightness leave my chest. This was still us. Complicated, badly timed, and somehow still us. I don't want to be a factor in your decision, I said. She set down her fork. You already are. That's what worries me. Mason, people are factors. That doesn't make them obligations. She leaned forward. The museum matters, the title matters, you matter. I'm allowed to consider all of it. What happens if you take the job and we fail? What happens if I reject it and resent you? What happens if I take it, we fail, and I love the job? What happens if we don't fail? I looked at her. Julia's expression softened. You always treat the worst possibility like it's the most honest one. That way it can't surprise me. No, it just gets to make your decisions. I sat back, stung again, because she knew where to aim. She reached across the table. I gave her my hand. I don't need certainty, she said. I need to know you're willing to try when things aren't certain. I drove away this morning, didn't I? After nearly ruining it in the parking lot. Still counts. Her thumb stroked my knuckles. Barely. By late afternoon, the Chicago skyline rose beyond the windshield. Julia called me through the truck's hands-free system. Your brake light is out. Hello to you too. And you missed the exit. I did not. You absolutely did. 5 minutes later, I discovered I had. She did not let me forget it. My new apartment was on the third floor of a brick building in Lincoln Square. It was smaller than the listing had implied, but sunlight filled the front room, and there was a narrow balcony beyond the kitchen. Julia walked through every room while I unlocked the truck. When she returned, she was smiling. What? There's a coffee shop across the street, the bathroom has a clawfoot tub, and your bedroom closet is larger than mine. So, you approve? I didn't say that. The kitchen cabinets are criminal. We carried boxes until sunset painted the windows gold. Then Julia opened the bedroom door. I'd placed the mattress on the floor again, surrounded by boxes. She looked from it to me. Apparently, we have a theme. I can buy a bed frame tomorrow. Slow down. We've only just upgraded from bare floor to hardwood. I set down the lamp in my hands. She was standing in my new bedroom, wearing my college shirt beneath her coat. And for one reckless second, the answer seemed simple. Move in with me, I said. Julia went very still. My pulse hammered. I mean, if you take the job, I added, you'd need somewhere to stay. There's closet space, and we already know which side of the bed you... No. The word stopped me. Her face wasn't angry. Somehow that made it worse. No, I repeated. Julia came closer and took my hands. I want you, she said. But I will not become another box you rush to fit into your new life because you were afraid of leaving something behind. That's not what I meant. Then ask me for what you actually want. I stared at her. She squeezed my fingers, eyes bright with hope and fear. Not a roommate, she whispered. Not a solution. Ask me to stay because you want a life with me. Julia's hands were warm around mine. Ask me to stay because you want a life with me. The old instinct rose first. Deflect. Joke. Promise something vague enough that neither of us could hold me to it. Julia saw the hesitation. Her fingers began to loosen. I tightened my grip. I want mornings with you, I said. She stopped pulling away. I want you stealing my coffee even though yours is right beside it. I want to sit in the back row at your museum events and watch you terrify donors. I want weekends, arguments, grocery lists, and whatever else happens when two people stop leaving themselves emergency exits. Mason, I want a life with you. Her eyes filled. I touched her cheek. But I don't want you moving into this apartment tomorrow. The hope in her expression flickered. Not because I'm uncertain about you, I added. Because you were right. I turned moving in together into a logistical solution. You deserve your own decision, your own apartment if you want one. A first date before we start fighting over cabinet space. The cabinets are indefensible. They're going through a difficult period. She laughed shakily. I rested my forehead against hers. Take the job if you want the job. Stay in Columbus if that's where you want to be. Either way, I'm asking you to be with me. Long distance? If that's what it takes. You hate phone calls. I'll learn. You get carsick on trains. I'll suffer beautifully. And if I move here, I'll help you find somewhere with respectable cabinets. I brushed away the tear that slipped down her cheek. Then I'll ask you to move in someday because we're ready, not because your boxes happen to fit. Julia looked at me for a long moment. That, she whispered, was the right answer. Can you put that in writing? No. Then she kissed me. She pushed me back against a stack of boxes, arms around my neck, all the uncertainty between us turning briefly into hate. I held her waist and kissed her with everything I hadn't known how to say 2 days earlier. When she drew back, her lips were swollen and her cheeks flushed. What? She asked. I was wondering whether this counts as our first date. This is manual labor followed by an emotional breakthrough. So, no. It's the best offer I've had so far. I took her hand. Get your coat. Why? I'm improving the offer. 20 minutes later, we walked beneath strings of lights on Lincoln Avenue. The rain had cleared, leaving the night sharp and cold. Julia tucked her hand into my coat pocket with mine. I have my own pockets, she said. Mine are warmer. Prove it. You're currently conducting the experiment. She leaned against my shoulder. Results are promising. We found a narrow Italian restaurant squeezed between a record shop and a florist. There were candles in green bottles and only 8 tables. The hostess seated us by the window. For the first time since the folder fell from her bag, we didn't discuss the job. Julia told me about the wedding where the groom's grandmother had stolen the microphone and performed a 10-minute version of Total Eclipse of the Heart. I told her my new manager had ended every email with the phrase, "Let's make magic," which seemed aggressive for a software company. We split tiramisu. Julia ate most of it. You keep doing that, I said. Doing what? Ordering your own food, then eating mine. I like knowing you'll share. The words settled softly between us. I put down my spoon. Always. She looked at me over the candle flame, and I saw her accept the answer. On the walk home, snow began to fall, thin, uncertain flakes that vanished against the pavement. Julia stopped beneath the streetlight. What? I asked. Our first snow. It's barely weather. It counts. You have suspiciously flexible standards. She took my face in both hands. Be quiet and kiss me in it. I did. The city moved around us, tires hissing over wet streets, music spilling from an open doorway. Julia rose onto her toes and kissed me beneath a weak November snowfall, as if she had already chosen this place. As if she had chosen me. But later, in the dark bedroom, she admitted she hadn't. We lay on our sides beneath the blanket, her bare foot tucked between mine. The mattress was still on the floor, but the lamp cast a warm glow across the newly assembled nightstand. The deadline is 5 tomorrow, she said. What are you going to do? I don't know. I brushed my fingers along her arm. What's holding you back? My mother is in Columbus, my friends are there. I know every hallway in my museum and which caterer lies about being gluten-free. Important intelligence. I built a life there. You did. And part of me is afraid that if I accept, everyone will think I moved here for you. I'll know you didn't. She gave me a small smile. Will you? I considered lying. Instead, I said, I'll remind myself. That's almost romantic. It's honest. That's better. She moved closer and placed her palm over my heart. I want this, she said. You and me? I'm just trying to figure out if wanting you means I have to want Chicago, too. It doesn't. What if distance changes us? It will. Her brow furrowed. I covered her hand with mine. Being together would change us too. We don't get to preserve this exact moment. No emergency exits, she murmured. No emergency exits. She kissed me slowly, then rested her head against my chest. We fell asleep holding each other. The weekend passed too quickly. Saturday, we unpacked the kitchen and argued about where mugs belonged. Sunday, I took her to the Art Institute. She spent 20 minutes in front of a painting and caught me watching her instead of it. You paid $30 to ignore priceless art, she said. I'm looking at something I love. That line should not have worked. It worked? She pulled me behind a marble column and kissed me until a security guard cleared his throat. Monday morning, Julia dressed in the blue sweater she'd worn the first night. Her bag sat by the door. The train to Columbus left at 10:15. You could answer the offer before you go, I said. I could. But you're not going to. No. I nodded, fighting every impulse to persuade her. On the platform at Union Station, announcements echoed overhead. Travelers moved around us in hurried streams. Julia held the folder against her chest. When I call them, she said, I need to hear my own voice give the answer. I understand. And whatever I decide, we'll figure it out. She studied my face. You really mean that? I love you, not your zip code. Her mouth trembled. I kissed her once gently, then again because gentle wasn't enough. The boarding announcement sounded. Julia wrapped her arms around me and held on. Ask me, she whispered against my neck. My chest tightened. Ask you what? The question from the first night. I drew back enough to see her. Which side is yours? A tear slipped down her cheek, but she smiled. The side next to you. The conductor called for final boarding. Julia picked up her bag. Every part of me wanted to tell her not to go. Instead, I stepped aside. She boarded the train without looking back. At 4:58 that afternoon, my phone rang. Julia's name filled the screen. I answered before the first ring ended. What did you decide? For several seconds, there was only her breathing. Then she said, I turned down Chicago. You turned it down, I repeated. Yes. I sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at the space where she'd slept. Because of me? No, and before you spiral, I didn't choose Columbus over you. Those sound like the two available options. That was the problem. Her voice steadied. I kept acting as if I had to accept their offer exactly as written or reject the entire future. So I turned down the offer they made. What does that mean? It means the job description was wrong. I frowned. You said it was your dream job. I said the title was impressive. The actual job was mostly fundraising and donor management. I'd spend less time creating events and more time convincing rich people to put their names on walls. You're good at convincing rich people. I'm exceptional, but it isn't what I love. I heard something beneath her words now, not regret. Energy. So, what did you do? I made a counterproposal. Community programming, public events, oversight of the gala, and authority to hire my own team. I stood. You invented a different job. I suggested they stop wasting my talent. That sounds like you. They said they need 48 hours to consider it. And if they say no, I stay here, we do the train thing. I keep looking for a job I actually want. Relief and pride tangled in my chest. You scared me. I scared myself. She paused. Are you disappointed? Julia, you just negotiated with a major museum instead of letting fear make the decision for you. So I'm a little in awe of you. Her breath caught. And, I added, I'm already checking train schedules. You get car sick. Only when facing backward. You complained for 4 hours on the Boston trip. I was building character. She laughed softly, and the sound made the apartment feel less empty. I love you, she said. I love you too. We're really doing this? I looked at the boxes stacked around my new life. For years, commitment had seemed like a door closing. With Julia, it felt like finally walking through one. Yes, I said. We are. The museum called Wednesday afternoon. They accepted every term except the size of her initial team. Julia accepted after negotiating one additional position and a relocation package. She phoned me from the bookstore cafe where we'd met. I'm moving to Chicago, she said. You're taking the job? I'm taking my job, the one I made. My smile hurt. When do you start? 4 weeks. And where will you live? There was a deliberate pause. I found an apartment 12 minutes from yours. 12? 10 if you walk faster than an elderly tortoise. I was carrying your shoes that day. You volunteered. You said your feet hurt. And you chose me, very romantic. Slow, but romantic. We spent the next month apart. Long distance turned out to be less cinematic than I'd imagined. There were frozen video calls, missed trains, and one Friday night when I fell asleep while Julia described linen samples. She stayed on the call anyway. I woke at 2 in the morning to find her asleep on my screen, cheek pressed to one hand. I whispered goodnight and left the call connected until sunrise. We also learned to ask for what we needed. When I went quiet, Julia didn't let me call it being busy. When she worried she was rearranging her life around me, I reminded her of the department she'd designed and the team she'd demanded. I visited Columbus twice. She came to Chicago once and toured apartments with a clipboard. On moving day, I arrived outside her building at 7 in the morning with coffee, packing tape, and a roll of bubble wrap. Julia opened the door in my college shirt. "You planned that?" I said. "Maybe." Her apartment was filled with boxes. On each one, she'd written detailed labels: kitchen, plates, office files, bedroom. Mason is not allowed to drop this one. I pointed at the last box. Hostile. It contains lamps. I can carry a lamp. You dropped yours. That box was structurally compromised. We loaded everything by late afternoon. Her mother cried. Julia cried. I nearly did. Then claimed dust exposure, but when we reached Chicago, I didn't take her belongings to my apartment. I carried them up to hers. We assembled her bed frame, argued over the instructions, and ate takeout on the floor. When the room was finally livable, Julia sat on the mattress and patted the space beside her. I joined her. She laced her fingers through mine. "Does it bother you that I didn't move in with you?" "No." "Really? I plan to make such a strong impression that you'll invite me eventually. You're very confident for a man who installed the headboard backward. It's reversible. It's facing the wall. Design choice." She kissed my cheek. "You have your own drawer." "That's practically a proposal. It's one drawer, Mason. Top or bottom. Don't push it." She gave me a second drawer 2 months later. We dated properly after that. There were dinners that didn't involve moving boxes, Sunday walks by the lake, museum openings where I sat in the back and watched Julia command the room. She met my new coworkers. I learned the names of everyone on her team. We fought too. Once I canceled dinner 3 times in 1 week because of a product launch. Julia told me she refused to become an appointment I kept rescheduling. The old version of me would have defended myself until the original hurt disappeared beneath logistics. Instead, I went to her apartment, apologized, and listened. When Julia's first major public event at Lakeshore drew 3 times the expected crowd, she found me after her speech and kissed me in front of 200 people. "You did it," I whispered. "We did not do it," she corrected. "I did it." "You absolutely did." Then she kissed me again. A year after the night she pointed at my bare mattress, we signed a lease together. Not because one of us needed somewhere to stay. Not because distance was inconvenient, because we were ready. Our new place had wide windows, a small balcony, and kitchen cabinets Julia considered morally acceptable. On the first night, we sat among half-open boxes eating blueberry pancakes from the diner mix her aunt had mailed us. Our bed frame was assembled correctly, mostly. When it was time to sleep, Julia stood in the doorway wearing that same faded college shirt. She looked at the bed, then at me. "Which side is mine?" I crossed the room, put my arms around her, and kissed the dusty spot on her cheek. "The side next to me," she smiled. "Right answer." Years earlier, I'd believed loving someone meant giving them the power to leave. Julia taught me that love wasn't preventing someone from leaving. It was trusting them to choose, and having the courage to choose them back. We switched off the light and climbed into bed, her hand finding mine beneath the blanket. Outside, snow drifted past the windows. Inside, surrounded by boxes we would unpack together, Julia curled against my chest on the side that had always been hers. What would you have done if your best friend pointed at your bed and asked which side was theirs the night before you moved away? Have you ever experienced something similar when friendship suddenly became something more? Tell me your story in the comments. And for those who'd like to be a little closer to us, we've opened memberships, where you'll get shorter exclusive stories every week with no ads. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.